Okay. So let's start this class. This class we are going to discuss about restriction endonucleases. These restriction endonucleases are the enzymes which are used to cut the DNA at a specific site, at a specific recognition sequence. As you all know, while producing this recombinant DNA molecule, there is cutting and joining of the DNA molecules involved, because the fragment of DNA or the sequence of interest will be incorporated into the vector molecule while producing the recombinant DNA molecule. That means if you want to excise your sequence of interest from the genomic DNA, you need to cut it from the genomic DNA, and later stages will be, of course, will be isolation and purification. Once this cutting and purification happens, then you will incorporate in the vector molecule where the rejoining of DNA molecules is involved. So in that context, after these restriction endonucleases have been discovered and characterized, then the technology of recombinant DNA has become reality. That means the DNA cloning has become a reality. So in today's class, it comes under the unit of tools of genetic engineering. The first tool of genetic engineering we are going to discuss is restriction endonucleases. We'll be discussing what are these restriction endonucleases, the properties, what are the different types, their mechanism of action, nomenclature, the recognition sequences, and few examples. So these are all the points we'll be discussing in this class. Right. As I told you, these restriction endonucleases are required to incorporate the fragments of foreign DNA into the vector, for which methods for cutting and rejoining the DNA molecules are required. The identification and the characterization of these restriction endonucleases sometime in the 1960 and early 70s it has been done. As I mentioned, this has become the key discovery that allowed the cloning of DNA to become a reality. These restriction endonucleases, they occur as restriction modification systems. And these restriction modification systems, they occur in many bacterial species. And the purpose of this restriction modification system to occur in bacteria, because they act as defense mechanism against the introduction of foreign DNA into the cell. If there is any introduction of foreign DNA into the cell because of virus infection or whatever, this restriction modification system, it acts as defense mechanism to the cell. Moving on. Okay, this restriction modification system, this consists of two components. This consists of two components. One is restriction endonuclease, the other one is methylase. The restriction endonuclease component, it recognizes the short symmetrical DNA sequence, which is called recognition sequence. And this recognition sequence is very specific for a particular restriction enzyme. And then it recognizes and cuts the DNA backbone in each strand at a specific site within the recognition sequence itself. So these restriction endonucleases, they recognize the specific recognition sequence and cuts both the strands of DNA at a specific site, usually within the recognition sequence of this target DNA. So when this cutting or degradation takes place, the foreign DNA will be degraded into short fragments. That's how it becomes inactive. Because I mentioned that these restriction modification systems occur in bacteria as a defense mechanism to the cell. And the second component of this restriction modification system, it is a methylase. What does this methylase component of this restriction modification system does is that it adds methyl groups to certain bases within the recognition sequence of the target DNA. What are the certain bases to which these methyl groups are added are either C or A. if there are CRA bases present within the recognition sequence, the methylase is the enzyme that adds methyl groups, thereby the methylation of the recognition sequence takes place in the cellular DNA. What is the purpose of it? I told that this restriction modification system occur in the cells as a defense mechanism, and it has the two components. One component is restriction endonuclease and the other component is methylase. Of course, the restriction endonuclease component is the one that acts as defense mechanism by degrading the foreign DNA that is entering into the cell. And what if the host DNA, it should not be degraded by the same recognition, the same restriction endonuclease. So what happens, the methylase component of this restriction modification system is the one that methylates certain bases in the recognition sequence, and because of this methylation of the recognition sequence, what happens? The DNA becomes resistant to the activity of restriction endonuclease. That's how the host DNA is protected by this restriction endonucleases because of the modification rendered by methylase component of this restriction modification system. If it is foreign DNA, the restriction endonuclease cuts that foreign DNA into short fragments by which it becomes inactive. If it is host cellular DNA that is modified by methylase so that it becomes resistant to the activity of restriction endonuclease. That's how the restriction modification system within the cell acts. Now, let's move on to the types and mechanism of action. There are three important types and one more type is also mentioned. Type 1, type 2, type 3 and type 2S. Since this type 2S is very similar to type 2 enzymes but there is slight difference, these are named as type 2S. So one by one, let's see how these different types of these restriction enzymes are different in terms of their mechanism of action and which is useful, which is not useful for DNA cloning. So this slide summarizes the characteristics and the differences of all these 4 different types of restriction endonucleases. The type 1, it is one enzyme with 3 different subunits. The 3 different subunits are meant for recognition, cleavage and methylation. And this type 1 restriction endonucleases, they recognize and methylase the same sequence. But the problem is that they cleave the DNA randomly, approximately, around 1000 base pairs away from the recognition sequence. In general, whenever we discuss about these restriction endonucleases, we say that they identify a recognition sequence in the target DNA and the cleavage takes place within the target DNA. And this recognition and cleavage is very, very specific because of which the fragments produced by restriction digestion are of defined length. They are of specific length. But in case of type 1 restriction endonucleases, what happens? There is recognition sequence. They recognize the recognition sequence, but the cleavage takes place somewhere away randomly, usually about 1000 base pairs or more or less, many base pairs away from the recognition sequence. When the cleavage is at a random site, what happens? The restriction fragments produced will be of not specified length or defined length. That is why these type 1 enzymes are not useful in producing recombinant DNA molecules. I hope you are able to understand. And it occurs as one enzyme with different subunits. They recognize the recognition sequence. The problem is that the cleavage site is random. It cleaves the DNA away from the recognition sequence because of which, the fragments produced are not specific and they are not of defined length. Coming to the type 2, these type 2 enzymes, they recognize the same target sequence and here the recognition sequence is symmetrical. And the 2 enzymes, it occurs as 2 different enzymes. One is for cleavage, the other one is for methylation. They either cleave or modify the recognition sequence. Don't worry, a little bit more we are going to discuss in the upcoming slides. This is just the summary slide. So, the type 2 enzymes are more useful in DNA cloning. They recognize the recognition sequence, and within the recognition sequence, the cleavage takes place. It occurs as two different enzymes. I was mentioning it has got two different components, restriction endonuclease and methylase. Both are meant for, one is for cleavage, the other one is for methylase. Coming to the type 3, this occurs as again one enzyme with two different subunits, one for recognition and modification, whereas the other subunit is for cleavage. And it recognizes and methylates the same sequence. But here again the problem is that the cleavage is away from the recognition sequence. The cleavage does not take place within the recognition sequence, but here the distance is about 24 to 26 base pairs away from the recognition sequence. Whereas type 2, most of the characteristics are similar to type 2. I'm talking about type 2S restriction endonucleases. Most of the characteristics are similar to type 2. That's why they are named as type 2S. But the difference is that the recognition sequence is asymmetric, one difference in comparison with type 2. And another thing is that here also the cleavage takes place away from the recognition sequence. Now let's see a little bit more in detail the mechanism of this type 1, 2 and 3 restriction endonucleases. I've put this type 1 and type 3 together because there are more or less similar mechanism, and they are not very useful for DNA cloning. Type 2 restriction endonucleases are the ones, the useful restriction endonucleases that have got application in DNA cloning. Now let's discuss the mechanism of this type 1 and type 3. The methylation and cutting reactions both require the cofactors like ATP and SAM. This SAM is S-adenosyl methionine. It acts as methyl group donor also. So for the activity of this type 1 and type 3, they require the cofactors like ATP and S-adenosyl methionine. And in case of type 3, the recognition sequences are quite long and they are asymmetric in nature. The enzyme recognizes the recognition sequence present in the target DNA in case of type 1, but whereas the cleavage takes place randomly at a site which is quite far from the recognition sequence. It can be 1000 base pairs away from the recognition sequence. That's how this is not found to be useful in cloning, because the restriction fragments produced will not be of defined length. That is why the type 1 systems are found to be less useful in gene manipulation. But definitely we need to study about these type 1 restriction enzymes also. Why? Because you have to make sure to remove these type 1 restriction enzymes from the organism that will be used as host organism. Otherwise, the presence of this restriction enzyme, whether it is type 1 also, that will interfere with the isolation and recovery of the recombinant molecule present in the host organism. Remember, once the recombinant molecule is produced, that will be transferred to a host organism for the propagation of the recombinant DNA molecule. Though I am saying that type 1 restriction enzymes are not very useful because of the random cleavage and they do not produce the defined length of DNA fragments, but still understanding these type 1 restriction enzymes is important, because we have to make sure to remove these type 1 restriction enzymes from the organism, which will be used as host organism. Otherwise, it will interfere with the isolation and recovery of the recombinant DNA that is present in the host organism. That might degrade the recombinant DNA, which is of our interest. The examples of type 1 restriction enzyme are enzymes that are isolated from E. coli K and enzymes that are isolated from E. coli B strain. These are the examples of type 1 restriction enzymes. Coming to the type 3, where we have the example of ECO P1 that have got symmetrical recognition sequence. Other than that difference, by all means, they resemble the type 1 restriction enzymes. What are the other features? They require the cofactors like ATP and SAM, S-adenosyl methionine, and also the cleavage takes place away from the recognition sequence and it does not produce the fragments of defined length, which is why these are not found to be very useful in DNA cloning. That is why most of the useful restriction modification systems are of type 2 restriction enzymes. So in common, wherever it is, please mute yourself. Some noise is disturbing. All of you students, please mute yourself. Yeah, continuing. That is why wherever it is mentioned that restriction endonucleases, nothing is mentioned about its type, it means that they are type 2 restriction enzymes, because these are the most useful restriction enzymes that can be used during the process of producing recombinant DNA molecule. Now let's discuss more about type 2 restriction enzymes. They have several advantages over type 1 and type 3 restriction enzymes. The first advantage we can mention is that restriction and modification, these are mediated by separate enzymes. As I told you, two components are present, restriction endonuclease and methylase, to cleave the DNA in the absence of modification. The second advantage is that for the activity of these restriction enzymes, they do not require the cofactors like ATP and SAM, unlike type 1 and 3 restriction enzymes. Since they do not require these cofactors, using these type 2 enzymes for DNA cloning becomes easier. And most important property of these type 2 restriction enzymes is that they recognize a defined and symmetrical recognition sequence, and it cuts the DNA within the recognition sequence, because of which the restriction fragments produced will be of defined length. That means their activity is very, very specific. That's how they are very useful in the process of DNA cloning. And many of these type 2 restriction enzymes, they also make staggered break in the DNA. We will see more details. What is this staggered break? I hope you are able to understand the different three types of restriction enzymes, how they are different, and which are the useful restriction enzymes for the application in cloning. Moving on to the last type, type 2S. Why the name is given as type 2S? The molecular structure, if you look at, the properties, if you look at, they're all very similar to type 2 restriction enzymes. That's why these are called type 2S. But the difference is that the cleavage takes place at a distance from the recognition sequence. That's how the usage of this type 2S type of restriction enzymes in DNA cloning has become limited, because the cleavage does not take place within the recognition sequence. The example of type 2S restriction enzymes is MBO2. That is the example for type 2S. So overall, what is the conclusion after discussing the different types of restriction enzymes? We have 4 different types, but the most important type of restriction enzymes that have got application in DNA cloning is type 2. The advantage is that it occurs as 2 different components for cleavage and modification, one thing. Second thing is that their recognition sequence is symmetrical and it is very, very specific, and the cleavage takes place within the recognition sequence, because of which the restriction fragments produced are of defined length. That's why by default, if it is mentioned as restriction endonucleases during the process of recombinant DNA molecule production, it means that they are type 2 restriction endonucleases. Moving on, we are going to discuss about nomenclature. Since several restriction enzymes had been isolated and characterized, there is necessity for the uniform system of nomenclature. How do we name these restriction enzymes? A suitable system of this nomenclature was introduced by Smith and Nathans in the year of 1973. But the system what they had introduced had been simplified much, and the simplified version of this nomenclature system is in use these days. Now let's see how do we name the restriction enzymes based on this nomenclature system. The first letter of the restriction enzyme indicates the first letter of the genus name of the host organism. Please make note of it. If you take the restriction enzyme name, the first letter indicates the first letter of the genus name of the host organism or genus name of the source organism from which the enzyme had been isolated. The second two letters are taken from the first two letters of the species name of the source organism. I hope you are able to follow. The first three letters of the restriction enzyme. The first letter is the first letter of the genus name of the host organism, and the second two letters of the restriction enzyme are from the first two letters of the source organism. And always these restriction enzymes, when they are written, they are written in the italics, the way you write your biological names in the italics. The restriction enzyme names also, whenever you write, you're supposed to be writing them in italics if it is typed text. If you write, you're supposed to be underlined. And if there is a particular strain of the organism, the strain name also is indicated by taking the first letter of the strain of the organism. And if there are several enzymes that had been isolated from the same organism, same strain, then several enzymes are indicated by Roman numerals, like hint 1, hint 2, hint 3, EcoR1, EcoR2, EcoR3. In addition, if the enzyme had been isolated from the extra chromosomal replicon, in that case, the source of that extra chromosomal replicon also can be indicated. So this is how the restriction enzymes are given the names by following the systematic nomenclature mechanism. I hope you are able to follow. I'll show some examples so that it will be more clear for you. Examples of few restriction enzymes. Here the enzyme name, from which organism the enzyme had been isolated, and the recognition sequence of that particular enzyme. SMA1. SMA1 has been taken from Serratia marcescens. This is the first enzyme isolated from this organism. SC is from the genus name, and MAR, the first two letters of the. Any problem? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. All right. So the first letter of the genus name is taken, and the first two letters of the species name are taken, SMA, and then this one Roman numeral indicates that this is the first enzyme isolated. Similarly, HAE3, Haemophilus aegyptius, third enzyme, that's why. And here the recognition sequence is mentioned. Haemophilus, H is taken, influenza, IN is taken. Here strain D, that is why D is taken. And this is the second enzyme, Roman number 2. Third enzyme, Roman number 3. The other enzyme, BAM-H1, from Bacillus amyloliquefaciens, strain H, B, AM, H is from strain, first enzyme, it is 1. The recognition sequence is given. I told you sometimes the DNA source from which the enzyme is isolated is also indicated. If you take EcoR1, here it is not given EcoR1 as an example. That's very common restriction enzyme. All of you must be aware of this EcoR1 enzyme. Obviously, the source organism from which the enzyme had been isolated is Escherichia coli. From the genus name, E had been taken. Coli, CO had been taken. Here, R is not the strain actually. The enzyme had been encoded by the R plasmid. The plasmid which is responsible for antibiotic resistance, the R plasmid is the one encodes the enzyme. That's why EcoR is mentioned there. And one is the first enzyme. And EcoR2 is not from the same organism, from the different organism, but from the same antibiotic resistance factor, R factor, the ego R2. So what is the point I would like to mention here? It is not always the strain that is indicated here in the naming of the enzyme. Sometimes the DNA source that specifies the enzyme is also taken into consideration. So that's how the nomenclature system of the restriction endonucleases works. I hope this is clear to you. Just to summarize quickly once again, the first letter is taken from the first letter of the genus name. The second and third letter are taken from the first two letters of the species name. Then strain or the source of the DNA that specifies the enzyme, and 1, 2, 3, the Roman numerals, they indicate the number of enzymes that had been isolated from the same organism or from the same replicon or extra chromosomal DNA. So that's how the nomenclature system of the restriction endonucleases work. Moving on. Let's discuss about recognition sequences, and hereafter whatever we are discussing, it is all about type 2 restriction endonucleases, and the recognition sequences are also, we have taken the examples of type 2 restriction enzymes and we will be discussing. Recognition sequence, you know what is recognition sequence. Within the target DNA, the sequence that is recognized by the restriction endonuclease is called recognition sequence. The length of these recognition sequences could be from 4 to 8 base pairs in length, and they are palindromic in nature. Palindromic in nature in the sense, if you read the sequence in 5' to 3' directions in both the strands, it reads the same. You see here, if you read in 5' to 3' direction, this is GAATTC, and the same other strand, if you read the sequence in same 5' to 3' direction, again it reads the same. Such sequences are called palindromic sequences. So these are palindromic in nature, symmetrical. The length could be 4 to 8 base pairs length. So here 3 examples are given. When the restriction enzymes cleave the DNA in the recognition sequence, there are 3 different possibilities how the restriction fragments are going to be. It might produce the restriction fragments with 5' overhanging, or they might produce the restriction fragments with 3' overhanging, or they may produce blunt-ended restriction fragments, Whichever the type of restriction fragments produced, these restriction fragments are nothing but the products of the restriction digestion after the activity of the restriction endonuclease. Whichever the type of restriction fragments are produced, whether they are 5' ended, 3' ended, or blunt ended, the 5' end of the fragment will always have the phosphate group attached, and their 3' end will have the free hydroxyl group. And another property, so the examples I would just mention, EcoR1, if you take an example, the cleavage takes place like this, and it produces the 5' overhang or 5' protruding end. That means 5' single stranded protruding end. This is called 5' overhang. And these 5' overhang or 3' overhang produced by the enzyme PST1 after the restriction cleavage, it produces the 3' overhang or 3' protruding ends. And as I told you, always the 5' end will have the phosphate groups attached, and the 3' overhang, the 3' end will have the free hydroxyl group. These 5' or 3' overhangings, they have a further property known as these ends are sticky or cohesive in nature. What do I mean by sticky or cohesive in nature? They are able to base pair with each other when the similar ends are put in together by base pairing. See, when the compatible ends are allowed to join or allowed to bind, they can join by base pairing with each other. That means by forming hydrogen bond with each other, and they can be covalently joined further by the activity of DNA ligation. That's why these ends of overhanging, protruding ends are called sticky or cohesive in nature, because they are able to anneal or base pair with each other by the formation of hydrogen bonding if compatible ends are present. And the example for blend end producing restriction enzyme is SMA1. The blend ends are produced. Though they are blend ends, the 5' end has the phosphate group attached and the 3' end has the free hydroxyl group. So these are the different ways of, the restriction enzymes produce the restriction fragments with 5' overhanging ends, 3' overhanging ends and blend ends. As I told you, they cleave DNA symmetrically in both the strands at short palindromic recognition sequences. They leave 5' phosphate and 3' hydroxyl group. They also might leave blend ends or protruding 5' or 3' ends. Why they are called cohesive ends? The products of this restriction digestion with protruding ends have a further property. These ends are known as cohesive or sticky ends, because they can bind to any other end with the same overhanging sequence by base pairing or annealing of the single-stranded tails. So the fragment formed by EcoR1 can anneal to any other fragment formed in the same way. Another DNA which is digested with EcoR1, these two ends will be compatible to base pair with each other and they can be easily ligated after producing after providing the reaction with DNA ligase, and as I told you, they can be subsequently joined by ligation. In some cases, the ends may be formed by enzymes with different recognition sequences also could be compatible, provided if they have the single-stranded tails, if they are capable of base pairing with together, they would be able to bind to each other. So here the point is that when you use the restriction endonucleases, the restriction fragment produced could be 5' overhang, 3' overhang or blend ended. These overhanging ends are sticky in nature because they are able to base pair with the compatible ends. The compatible ends could have been produced by the same enzyme or they could have been produced by the different enzyme, but if they have the compatible ends, if they are able to bind to each other, in that case, they can anneal to each other and covalently they can join further by the action of DNA ligase. That's what is meant by cohesive ends of the restriction enzymes in case of the enzymes that produce either 5' overhanging ends or 3' overhanging ends. I'll just look at the time, how long more we can continue. Yeah. So next, what are isoschizomers and neoschizomers? These isoschizomers are the pair of restriction enzymes. They have got the same sequence specificity, meaning their recognition sequences are same and they also have got the same cut site. The restriction enzymes that have got the same sequence specificity and cut site are called isoschizomers. The examples are HPA2 and MSP1 with the recognition sequence CCGG. These are the pair of two restriction enzymes that have got same recognition sequence and cut site. These kind of questions are asked in the entrances, competitive exams like CSIR entrance or NET entrance, something like that. So you can make note of such important points. Similarly, what are neoschizomers? Neoschizomers are a pair of restriction enzymes. Okay, they have the same recognition sequence, but their cut sites are different. In case of isoschizomers, same recognition sequence, same cut site, but whereas in case of neoschizomers, pair of restriction enzymes that have got same recognition sequence, but their cut sites are different. Such pair of recognition sequences are called neoschizomers. The examples are SMA1, XMA1. It has got the cleavage site here after CCC, whereas SMA1 has got cleavage site after the first C. That's how their cut sites are different. These are called neoschizomers. I hope you are able to follow it. What are isoschizomers and neoschizomers? The next last point to mention in today's class is what is star activity. Star activity is nothing but the reduced specificity of restriction endonucleases. What is this reduced specificity? Under certain suboptimal conditions like extreme conditions such as high pH, means elevated pH or low ionic strength, these restriction endonucleases are capable of cleaving the sequences which are similar but not identical to their defined recognition sequence. Their defined recognition sequence slightly varies under certain extreme conditions. That means their activity, that means the specificity of their activity is reduced. Such reduced specificity of this restriction endonucleases is called star activity. This altered specificity is known as star activity. Examples are given here. EcoR1 star, that means the star activity of EcoR1. When it has got the star activity, it cleaves the sequence, the recognition sequence NAATTN, where N could be any base, or otherwise its regular recognition sequence is G. If it is able to cleave the DNA with the recognition sequence in place of A, any other base, it means that its specificity is reduced. Such reduced specificity of the restriction endonuclease is called star activity. It happens under suboptimal conditions like, high pH or the low ionic strength. In such cases, the specificity is altered, which is called as star activity. So this is all I wanted to discuss in today's class. In the university exams, it can be asked as one essay question. Explain the types, mechanism of action, properties, nomenclature, and the uses of restriction endonucleases. Like an essay question, it can be asked. So we have discussed what are restriction endonucleases. They occur as restriction modification systems. It has got two components. Naturally, it occurs in the organisms as defense mechanism. There are several types, type 1, type 2, type 3, type 2S. Among all, type 2 are most important for the applications of cloning because the cleavage takes place within the recognition sequence, which is why the defined length of fragments are produced. That means they are very, very specific in their action. The other restriction enzymes, though they do not have direct application in DNA cloning, but still it is important to study the other types of restriction enzymes because we have to make sure to remove these other types of restriction enzymes from the organism, which will be used as host organism, not to interfere in the isolation and the analysis of recombinant DNA molecules. Later we discussed about recognition sequences. They are palindromic in nature. Restriction enzymes can produce either 5' overhangs, 3' overhangs, or blend-ended. They are sticky or cohesive in nature because when the compatible ends are allowed to join, they are able to base pair with each other and they can be covalently joined by the activity of ligase. Then we also discussed about nomenclature. Since several restriction enzymes had become available, there is a need for the uniform nomenclature system. I explained how the restriction enzymes are named. Then at last we also discussed what are isoschisomers, what are neoschisomers, and then at the end I also mentioned what is star activity of restriction endonucleases. For this topic I have referred the book Walden Primrose, The Principles of Gene Manipulation, and also a little bit of information I have taken from the Molecular Biology by Turner. I think both the books might be available with you, and hopefully I'll remember and send the ebook of Walden Primrose for you. I'll share to you in the Google groups. Just to make sure that I do not forget about it, one of you please message me about sending the book. I'll do that for you. I think that is all I wanted to discuss in today's class. In the next class, I will discuss the other class of enzymes which are required for DNA cloning.